Public Works Commission is conducting this meeting on May 14th, 2025 at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Zoom platform and in person. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website. I see we have a quorum, and before I call this meeting to order, I want to welcome Chris Reynolds as a new commissioner taking the seat today.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And it's right. Can we mute everyone? And will be right a very busy meeting. Normally it is not that packed as today. So
I'm ready.
You're ready. Good. So I, Sven Weber, hereby call this meeting to order. Given we are here in person, we don't need to do a roll call. As said, it's packed. We need to be out here at 6:30 p.m. Normally we try to be done by 6 p.m., but I think that is unrealistic. So nevertheless, try to be out here by 6:30. Let's start with review and approval of the minutes from April 9th. You had a couple of additions and corrections. You have anything else from the comments you had, Andrea?
Anything else? No.
Yeah.
So I make a motion to hereby accept the April 9th, 2025 minutes of the Public Works Commission as amended.
Second.
So, okay, to all in favor?
Aye.
So it's here is approved. Now the meeting, the review of the calendar, Alan.
Sure, very quickly, what we have is,
Excuse me, are you gonna do public comments?
It comes after that.
Okay,
yeah, we'll get
I'm just
there.
looking.
It's
Sure.
coming.
Thank you.
So, the June meeting generally, and Chris, is for you, we meet on the second Wednesday of the month. The exception is because we have town meeting on June 2nd through the 5th. We are actually, and I'm gonna be unavailable. We've determined that we'll meet on 6/25. That's scheduled, important is water sewer enterprise rate hearing. That's the only sort of known item at this time, but between now and then, depending on what comes up or what we, discover, we might add to that. This is a general outline, just to give us a sense of higher level issues. And I'll also mention in the summer, if possible, we tend to take July, August recess unless there's something really pending emergency, and then we'll kind of reach out and reconvene if necessary.
I'll like to do that by Zoom, the June 25th. I'm available.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do it by Zoom.
All right.
Okay. Good. Any other comments on the calendar? I don't see so. So now we get to public comments. And I just want to remind the public, this part of the agenda is for public comments for topics that are not on the agenda. Every agenda item we open up for public comments specific to the agenda item. So please limit, the whole time is limited to 15 minutes maximum with no more than 2 minutes allocated to any one speaker. Please be polite. That's all we are asking for. And it looks like we have at least one in the audience. And please, your name and address to start with.
Yes, my name is Kim Castens. I live at 294 Pope Road in Acton. And my question is, I'm looking at the final 2025 intended use plan for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. And I see that Concord's $58 million request for a loan for the Magog water treatment plant seems not to be on the list of approved projects. And so I'm here to learn what I can about what your plans are going forward for that facility. I'm particularly interested in the question of what would be the timing and what might be the timing by which the work on Great Road might happen now under this new circumstance, and what might be the timing of the increase of withdrawals from Magog Pond.
Yeah, I think we should anyway update on this in one of the next meetings where we have less busy.
Sure.
To see where are we on the water side and what's the timing on these things.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
so let's take that on one of the next agendas.
Okay.
Yeah, is that okay?
Okay, so you're just basically wish to put that on a future agenda.
yeah.
Can I ask to be notified when that's gonna be taken up?
Yeah, well, if we put it on the next agenda, that's 6:25.
Great, okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Not in the room. Bob, do you have someone online?
No, there is nobody online.
Nobody online, and I think David Long is coming. So, with that, I close the public comments and we go to commissioner comments. Anything the commissioners want to talk about, observations everyone had?
Nothing outside of the agenda anyway.
Okay, so we had, I think, quite, good League of Women Voters event this morning. I think it's important. I think we have to continue educating on what is on the town warrant.
Mhm.
Um,
And there'll be another one Friday and one on Wednesday, the 21st.
Where will those be?
Those are.
I'm winning
at the
time
library,
here.
in the
Okay. So, so nothing out of the order here. So let's move then on, well, we're a little bit early to the Stormwater Enterprise hearing. We're 5 minutes early.
You want to do election of officers outside of the?
Yeah,
regular order?
let's pull D8 outside the order and do election of officers. So the plan is to elect the next chair and the vice chair of the commission effective immediately after town meeting. But we do the
Okay.
vote now.
Okay.
And then the new chair and vice chair take their role and responsibility effectively after town meeting. We discussed this a little bit before in the group, and I do the unusual step as a chair. Normally I don't make a motion, but I would nominate Andrea Solomon as chair and Gretchen Robach as vice chair.
Can I second that?
So any discussions? Questions to the future chair? None, so all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, I figure, so congratulations, Andrea.
Thank you.
Yeah, the moment the ring bells and the town meeting is over, I go on vacation.
And you would deserve a vacation.
Okay, now, we are 4:08, but I think we can start just 1 minute early.
Mhm.
So, just to remind everyone, the Stormwater Enterprise rate hearing is an official hearing we need to put in place. It's the first time we are doing this, because it will be the first time we are establishing a budget. As a reminder for, the process, last year town meeting approved setting up an, enterprise, stormwater enterprise bylaw. And, this year, the town meeting has a proposal for a $1 million budget. That budget is, the money is generated by fees, and we are the fee authorizing authority. And the town meeting is the authority that authorizes the use of the money that is generated by the fees. But just to be clear, I would like to move to open the public hearing for the establishment of the stormwater rates and credit policy to be assessed for the fiscal year 2026, subject to authorization of a stormwater enterprise budget at a 2025 annual meeting. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So motion is, the public hearing is opened, and Alan, you want to make the presentation of
Sure.
the rate,
We're
or
gonna have Steve Dukran
Steve
come up,
Dukran doing it?
and he'll be up, and Tamika Hodel will also be available. Okay, well, we have the team, basically, this is a culmination of a lot of work, just reminds the commission and the audience that we've, done a lot of detailed work up until this point, where Sven mentioned, we've talked about a budget. That's what town meeting's for, but the bylaw, last year, there was a establishment of the stormwater utility fund. So it's a separate dedicated fund, meaning all revenue that goes in then gets spent towards, you know, the stormwater related activities. It doesn't get mixed with the general fund. And then the bylaw that was established last year also created a framework so that it identified definitions and there was authorities, and specifically the Public Works Commission was identified as the rate setting authority. So that's why we're bringing it before you, much like we do with the other utilities, water and wastewater, same concept. There's also a discussion as part of that framework of establishing credits for you know, this program. So with that said, you know, Steve, if you want to sort of, you know, speak to the actual rate structure that we're proposing and why.
Yeah, I'm gonna put anything up.
Yeah, I'm gonna share this.
Okay.
This works. There we go.
Right, yeah, so we don't need to talk about the budget anymore, but we just talk about how we establish the fees. We've had discussions here before, but a quick reminder. Fees are based on rates, which are based on the impervious area of parcels, and impervious meaning, you know, roads and driveways and so on. And that's important because we use impervious areas to calculate the amount of storm water runoff, and consequently, the impacts to our infrastructure as well as any pollutant loading. It's all based on that. So we had a consultant who had helped us to evaluate this, and what they did, they looked at what other towns have been doing, which is establishing a unit for which you can put a rate on, and in our case, it is the residential units. It's an ERU, equivalent residential unit. And when you do that, you're actually looking at the predominant land use in the town. And with us, for us, it is residential units. And so the ERU, so equivalent residential unit in this town is 5,570 square feet. That means the average residential unit has that amount of impervious surface. And then you took the budget. So the budget that we are aiming for is $1.1 million to be raised by this revenue. And you divide it by the ERU and you get $118 per ERU. So the total impervious area for all the parcels in town, residentials and non-residentials, and you get $118. Then you, with that 118, which is your ERU rate, is what you use now to establish the rates for each parcel. Now, there are two types of parcels we looked at. We looked at the small residential, which is the 1 to 3 units. And then the non-residentials, which include the larger residentials like condominiums and so on. So that's the larger classes. So for the small residentials, we looked at the 5 different tiers. Each tier having a range of impervious area. So the smallest being shown on the board here, 0 to 2,500 square feet. And then the others to follow to a maximum
Can
of
you see that in the
25,000
back
square feet.
or? Can you bit,
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can. Yeah, yes, I can expand this a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's the largest I can go here.
okay,
Is that okay? Yeah,
okay,
here we go.
Likewise, we had the same tier system for the non-residential, so even more tiers. And the whole idea about putting in tiers is to make it equitable, distribute the cost across the different areas where the burden, if you had to compare, say, for less tiers or flat rate, if the smaller parcels would have been at a disadvantage. And the other thing that we looked at in this system is trying to make sure that every parcel that generate stormwater through their impervious surfaces will be, charged. So they would include all the tax exempt properties, including the public properties like town-owned, state-owned, federal-owned. They're all included in this fee structure. Now, how do you take the ERU rate of $118 and put it to each of these tiers? They looked at the number of parcels in each tier and found the mean square foot amount in each tier, and they applied that they multiply that by the cost per ERU, and that's how you ended up with anyone, say for instance, the first tier small residential, any parcel between 0 and 2,500 square feet will be charged $41. Right, and so then you go to the next tier, it's 7823, means that the mean be of 2,500 to 5,000, it's not the average, but the mean of all the parcels there multiplied by the ERU rate will give you that number. That's how we got those numbers. Then you get to the non-residential, they decided that the smallest tier will be charged the base ERU, $118, so no one will be charged any less. But then you go upwards, you started using the mean of the values in between. So that's our fee structure that's been talked about. This is the preferred one by this commission. We have presented a few others, but this seems to be the best that would work for the town. And it's been advertised, this public hearing has been advertised for 3 weeks. And so this has been out there, number of meetings, including what was given this morning to the League of Women Voters. And if you have any questions on the rate itself, you can answer those now, or we can talk about the credit policy. I'm gonna bring those up. There are 3 types of credits that will be available, and this policy is subject to approval today by this commission. For small residential, if you want a credit because you are managing your stormwater on site in the form of like rain gardens or infiltrations systems and so on, you can apply for a credit, will be evaluated, and you up to 25% of your fee. And likewise for larger residentials, I mean, a lot of commercials, they do a lot. They do their own stormwater management when they come through site plan review and so on. They can apply for a credit if they think that their fee being charged is too high. And obviously we evaluate that. It will be a technical review. And so that credit is available up to 50% of their fee. And the last type of credit would be for senior or low income resident discount. And we would use the same system used for other types of
Kind of the low income.
low income
Yeah.
type residents. You have to qualify for those others in order to qualify for the stormwater fee discount.
Those are others that would already be eligible for water, sewer reduction, as well as municipal light, and as well as the solid waste recycling.
Is credit 1 and 3 additive? So could that add up to 50% on the residential?
That would be something to consider.
Yeah.
So is it spelled out somewhere or?
No. I don't think that's been contemplated,
Okay,
so I think we can contemplate that.
because then we're ending up in a similar range, like what can be done
Yeah,
for it.
and for clarification, we're probably talking maybe 50 properties that
Yeah.
might be eligible for the low income.
And they're probably more on the smaller scale in the first.
Generally speaking, they'd be in that small, so let's put it in perspective again, just to
Yeah.
understand. The credit policy is intended to provide some relief where people are doing the right thing. Incentivize maybe some work done on private property, And also be mindful of the fact that, the tiered system was already established, so those small parcels, the downtown, less area. Are generally, we're talking about a fee of, $50 a year. And then the question becomes, administratively, is it of interest or value to be submitting paperwork for $25, $30? That's up to the individual. So there's some incentive, but really it's the education opportunity. And then on the larger one, the credit policy really is important for the larger commercial institutional sites because they're large campuses. They may be doing a lot of work on site, and the fees are going to be significant, tens of thousands of dollars. So it's in their interest to understand what they're doing, improve it if they can, and get credit for it. So much smaller number of those kinds of parcels, but that's where, we think the credit may be, seriously considered because there's value in them evaluating it. I will also say this, as far as the credit policy, I mentioned this morning, stormwater is not fixed. All of the infrastructure and systems that we put in place, whether it's hard pipes, storm drains, catch basins, or, greener, rain gardens, they all need to be maintained. So whether it's publicly maintained or privately, just because you have it on your property, it still needs to be maintained. And that's a real important issue for larger commercial operations.
So Alan, does that mean they would have to reapply every year?
Yes, at this point, yes.
Yeah.
The only thing other thing we want to mention would be the billing. We've decided we bill monthly in line with the other types of utility bills, tax bills, the town sends out.
Not tax, the utility, the service, the water, water, sewer, electric, broadband are all billed on a monthly basis, and we intend to work with that system to institute this billing process as well.
Will that be then another check I have to write, or is that gonna be included in some number? Is that included?
That'd be one of the checks you write, if you have water and electric.
Yeah.
This would be for stormwater,
Monthly,
yes.
okay.
We take credit cards too.
Is there any consideration to, because this is very complicated and you guys have done great work. Is there any consideration to recognizing this is not a pilot, but it's a first time through? And that a year from now, we would come and revisit and see where it had to be tweaked,
Mhm.
or will that automatically happen?
No, it wouldn't automatically happen. The opportunity would be the rate hearing, which we
Right.
would do on an annual
Right.
basis. I
Right,
can imagine the credit policy is something we certainly want to evaluate.
and learn from,
From the convenience of a separate billing system for stormwater alone is probably cost prohibitive
oh,
anyway
yeah,
for the town. And we're really dovetailing with existing, people want the convenience of, I want all the utilities so I can see them and, get them on a monthly basis. And it's ironic that just a few years ago, we went to monthly billing for water and wastewater for customer convenience. They wanted that.
right. Can I ask one other question? That, when I look, for example, comparing the residential to the non-residential or larger residential. For example, if you look at the 25,000, the minimum impervious area, 25,000, the annual fee is $733. But if I look down at, that's for residential, but if I look down at non-residential, it's $763. Why is, I'm just curious as to why they're not exactly aligned. Is there a logic? What's the logic for different pricing?
So it has to do with the mean, so.
Okay.
Right, so you look at the number of parcels within that tier,
Mm,
find the mean, and then multiply that by the,
okay,
And the credits will be approved then really on a case by case basis? Is that how? it
Yeah, so
happens?
they would be submitted. This is one of the things we're sort of working through is the administration of
Yeah.
it. And our interest is to make sure that it is complete enough so staff can review it. But obviously the review for a small credit is gonna be different than the review for a large institutional credit. And, you know, the details of that, Sammy, I don't know if you have
Yeah,
any
we
examples or.
we have the draft application in the draft of the stormwater enterprise. Which will probably be modified as needed basis. It's not finalized yet, but it's, you can see like the draft version of it,
And it's based on
which is
other
more or less
communities.
almost, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
our consultant brought some examples from other communities that are doing this as well.
Any other questions from commissioners before? Okay, then I'll open it up to the public. Yes, name and address, please.
Harry Ackerman, I'm on the select board, but speaking for myself, I just have a couple of questions. On this chart, where it says maximum impervious area per square foot. So how do you figure out for a single family house, what is their impervious area?
We're working through our GIS system to do the full calculation. So as of right now, we have the preliminary fee calculation. If you go to the Public Works webpage, you would be able to see, click on the link and search your property, and you'll see the total impervious area that is there. It's a preliminary.
Okay.
But our GIS team is working to finalize which would not be like a whole lot different than what's there right now, but
Mhm.
we're working to finalize that, and it's based
Okay.
on the ArcGIS.
And sometimes driveways are paved and sometimes they have crushed stone or other materials. Is that all being treated the same? Like I have a neighbor that has impervious paver or pervious pavers. Like how is the GIS gonna pick up all of that?
As of right now, all of it is being considered as impervious, but
Okay.
they would be able to apply for the credit.
Okay. So
Because
they-
otherwise, it's like very hard for us to determine where it
Right.
would be, but the property owners would know, and then they can apply for the
So
credit.
they could apply and then they'd have to apply every year and maintain it and,
Yeah, every year, application, we're putting it that way because it needs to be maintained. And we just want to make sure that everybody is maintaining and they have the record of maintaining it so that it functions as it's intended to.
okay, and then my last question is on the monthly bill that people are going to get. Will it say, we show that you have this many square feet of impervious surface, therefore your rate is whatever, or is it just gonna say you owe this?
I think the fee, the actual bill, so we've done a lot of work, but not all the details.
Sure.
So we are working with NISC, which is the software developer for water, sewer,
Right,
electric.
right,
And we haven't customized what that bill will look like
right,
yet,
that's why I'm asking,
but that's a great question.
I'm
and,
hoping
yeah.
it'll say, refer to
Total
this chart
impervious.
and your impervious square feet is whatever.
I like the
Yeah, I think-
comment because there's no reason, the
Not to
fees for
show it.
residential, it's gonna be, just to be clear, for small residential. 4130, 7823, not a range, it's
Mhm.
not gonna vary month to
No,
month.
no, but
And we can probably include what is that range that you're in, so that's a good.
exactly, because then somebody could say, well,
Yeah.
wait a minute, there's a mistake, or,
That's
oh,
right.
I get
Yeah.
it, or whatever.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Any other question? Don,
It's Don Kupka, 39 Devon Street. I'm on FinCom, but this is personally, I'm speaking for myself. A couple of questions. There are 23 other towns that have done this in Massachusetts. Have we talked to them to see lessons learned?
Yes.
Okay, good. So the state has on their website, they have a stormwater fee schedule. They keep track of all of this. The vast majority, 18 of the 23, have flat fee for residential. They range from $35 to $100 in Newton. I'm guessing we're gonna have the highest residential rate in the state when we implement this. And I'm wondering why we are going through a lot of calculation when others are using flat fees.
Steve, you wanna take it or?
Well, it was recommended by our consultant, Weston and Sampson, who has looked at and worked on several of those other utilities for the different towns. And they told us that not only in Massachusetts, but also other parts of the country.
Yeah.
Based on impervious is actually the right way to deal with it.
Yeah, I think they almost all have that for commercial. It's just the single family that's almost always a flat fee.
Yeah, I think we also wanted to recognize because we have like very small parcels on the residential side and very big. So depending on the size, otherwise it wouldn't be fair to the small residential parcels. And I think that was a thought process that was.
And remember this, it's not the size of the parcel, it's the size of the
Impervious
impervious
area.
area. So you could have a large parcel with very small impervious cover, and
Yeah.
you would be assessed
Yeah.
according to the lower rate.
The
No,
impervious.
I understand. Somebody has to figure that all out, and my
Yeah.
worry is that we're spending money to bill as
Yeah,
opposed
no.
to spending money on stormwater
So
management.
part of the value in town is we invested early in our GIS system, and we have a very robust GIS system. I'm not sure that's the case with all these other communities, but we're able to look at the plans that we have, the aerial photographs, and
Yeah.
come up with these numbers. And part of the discussion for the commission was what gradation do we use? And I think originally one of them was, 10 tiers or something.
Yeah,
You start getting into the weeds, but I think that was the discussion.
yeah, I would
Remind it, yeah.
just say simplify.
Yeah, I would
simplify,
agree.
Right?
And here's
Devote
another factor,
words.
John, I think, that's they're considered, I think this is a consultant. They're using AI tools now to calculate the impervious area, so it's easy. It's a quick run of the tool on the GIS. I know
Okay.
you can get pretty accurate,
Okay.
values.
And lastly, so the largest bill would be $23,000 a year, is that right?
Yes.
So I just looked up, just thinking about how lucky we are to have a local hospital here. And Emerson Hospital, Community Hospital, lost $8.9 million in 2023, and I'm sure they haven't budgeted for this. And we'll do whatever we can to hold on, keep them going. They are along the Sudbury River, and I'm sure they have an EPA and PDS stormwater discharge permit, and they spend thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years maintaining that system. And we're gonna charge on top of that. Are we gonna take over in service for that? Are we gonna take over operation of their private system? Or, wouldn't that be fair?
Conceptually, and this is part of the discussion we've had. Yes, you're talking about these larger
Yeah,
commercial that have certain obligations.
yes.
If they do above and beyond that, they can get credit, and we'd encourage that.
But
Emerson
they're
Hospital-
already responsible for their own.
No, we understand that.
Yeah.
But we're looking at the fairness and equity town-wide. Now,
Yeah.
the amount of traffic and people who use infrastructure to get to Emerson, which is also part of the stormwater system, that's part of the collective. This has to cover those costs as well. So a traffic basis, they probably get much more value out of the residents who does much less traffic. And this is part of the whole big picture that we look at, but definitely here, the comment, but we also understand this is going to be Middlesex School and Concord Academy, all of these institutions that get the benefit of the infrastructure, but they also have their own. So it's even the federal government, National Park Service.
So it's just,
NASDAQ.
again, because it's not the first time we as the Public Works Commission are talking about, the rationale was, in the case you mentioned, assuming they have this in place and assuming it's according to standards and is maintained properly, they would qualify to up to 50% discount. So therefore, the discount is higher on the commercial side to give them a stronger incentive to do these things. But still would still be 11,500 whatever bucks. And that reflects to the general usage of the common space, or say everyone shares a bit of the roads and of the general infrastructure.
Yeah.
And definitely they're using our roads for good reasons. We have an interest they're using it. And we have to see how much of a hardship this is for certain companies and providers here in town. Yeah.
And I know this is in early days, and so we'll have lessons
Yes.
learned along the way. But I would love it if you could track how much money you're spending on the overhead. The fact that we're spending additional money
Mhm.
because it's an enterprise fund instead of raising the taxes in the general fund. Because we have to have separate, under the state's laws about enterprise funds, we have to track all of the costs and they all have to be segregated. And often that means separate trucks, separate tools. It's really not it's not conducive to least cost. That would be my.
No, there you have an important point. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have to track this. Yes.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Other questions in the room?
Courtney Whalen, 65 Dover Street. I just have a quick question. So we are on a private road in a private area in town, and I just am wondering, as we'll be kind of paying into all the costs of this, like, is there any benefit to any of the private roads throughout town with this plan in place to for any sort of maintenance and infrastructure on private roads? Does that make sense? As
Presently,
the town like utilizes our road
Right.
significantly,
Right.
so.
so it's an interesting question and it's good to have, but as far as the answer right now is if it's private infrastructure, this doesn't offset that cost. So in private ways, as you know, you have catch basins and, well, primarily leaching catch basins in the
Yeah.
White Pond area. This doesn't cover the cost for repair, replace, maintain that as is. If, and this is an analogy that we have in the, kind of Don's point of lessons learned. The water enterprise, which was only established well after the original system was installed, does allow for water infrastructure to be designed and constructed in accordance with town standards, and the water division will accept responsibility, including maintenance and replacement costs. So that's an avenue that we could contemplate for improvements in private ways. As long as the systems were brought to standards, I think that's going to be a discussion on, could the town then accept that responsibility? And I think the model is the water.
So we
Distribution
will
side.
in private neighborhoods be paying this fee. We
Correct.
just won't be able to.
Well, you'll
access
get the-
resources right now.
The media for the infrastructure in the private ways. All the other infrastructure is part of the
Town share.
town share.
All right, I'm just saying because the town does utilize our road on like a daily basis with the water down the street from us, so I'm just wondering how this might benefit the neighborhood.
Right.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Any questions online, Bob?
No, there are none.
There are no
Yeah.
questions?
No, there are not.
Anyone in the room? Any other questions from the commissioners?
I don't have any.
Yeah, I think given we are doing this the first time, it might be wise, to have an early review of this 6 months into it,
Mhm.
to see, what did work, what did not work, how many kind of applications we got for reductions, where are challenges, and so on, so that we,
Sure.
in ahead of the next rate hearing, which is literally kind of a year out,
Mhm.
that there's some preparation time for anything that might have bubbled up in this. And definitely at that time, we should also look definitely about the overhead cost. What does that mean? Because we don't want to have kind of a ballooning overhead cost, just that eats the main purpose of this away.
Right, correct.
Yeah,
When will you start billing, Alan?
So the ideal would have been July 1st after town meeting. Realistically, it's gonna be midsummer to early fall would be
Before you
realistic
can
to
start.
stand it up.
and then if we raise less money for the budget, we are not spending more than we are raising.
Correct, and that's
Yeah.
what the town meeting article is, to authorize whatever is in the fund. And if we don't have $1 million collected, we will not be able to spend $1 million in FY 26.
Yes,
Can you remind the audience? What happens if we don't do this, where the money comes from, what's been happening historically to repair culverts that fail?
Yeah.
And what the implications are for taxpayers?
Yeah, and we've done a lot
know
of
we've
this, but
covered
for
this,
this
but-
group, just without going too far down that path, we've done a lot of outreach, but the reality is Concord has been through the regular general fund requests. We've been asking for a couple $100,000 a year, and we've gotten somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000 a year. That's the standard. Reality is we've had two major emergencies. Causes from the Sawmill Brook on Monument Street and the culvert under Baker Ave, near Main Street, both at a cost of about $1.5 million. And those were unanticipated, unplanned. The goal is to get caught up, identify the needs before their emergency. And so the business as usual is kind of failing. But that's one layer, that's the infrastructure that Concord should care about. The other challenge, and as Don sort of alluded to, there's federal regulations that are also driving communities to do more with their stormwater. And those costs we see are designed to escalate. They've gone from identifying public outreach and information to asset assessment to next is going to be investments as far as replacing catch basins. Real costs are coming, and that's part of why those communities are preparing for that, have established these utilities.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good, if there are no other questions, do I hear a motion to close the hearing?
I hereby move to close the public hearing for the FY 26 stormwater rates and credit policy.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nobody abstained. This is unanimous. Okay, so we close the public hearing. Now the question is, do we have a motion with respect to?
Yes. I hereby make a motion to approve the FY 26 stormwater schedule of rates and credit policy as presented and detailed in the memorandum submitted by the Public Works Director dated May 5th, 2025.
Second.
Any discussions? No? Again, I would just want to have it in the records that 6 months
Yeah, we'll
from
be
now,
doing
we're doing
fall.
lessons learned
Correct.
and
Implementation. all
Yeah.
that.
and where the cost is, yeah?
Yeah.
So, all in favor? Aye. Is herewith unanimously approved, subject to the budget approval of the town meeting. Thank you. 18 months. So moving to the next agenda item is the Concord Carlisle High School amenities building. Wastewater capacity appeal of administrative denial. Let me say a few words to start with. We are not here to have a proxy town meeting, and we are not here to question the existence or the proposal of having the amenities building and the toilets there. Yeah, we are here to look at the appeal, and we go into details there, and really be fact-based, and focus on what is relevant to the Public Works Commission. I will try to structure this complex topic a little bit. I try to structure it in a way to have starting just purely on design questions, and then going to capacity questions with respect to where are we as Public Works in our wastewater capacity and what might come down the road. And then have kind of the thinking of what, is this fitting in? Are there alternative thoughts we might have? And then deliver it to whatever say, either motion or feedback we want to have. So but clearly, we are not deciding here about the budget or the validity of the amenities buildings. Yeah. Do we have someone from CCHS present? So if you would come up front, that would be nice. Also to frame this is, because there's a little bit confusion around the process. Given we have extremely limited capacity, we have to process that everything that is more than 1,000 gallons per day is routinely denied as an application, and then an appeal needs to be brought forward to the commission, and it's our decision then what we do with the appeal. If you approve, deny, send people back for more homework. So that is the question here. And I would like to give just in the beginning you just a short introduction in that sense, as you say, okay, this is your appeal and that the things you want to have us discuss. Okay.
Is that now?
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
So my name is Bob Connery. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations for Concord Public Schools in the Concord-Carlisle Regional School District. I presented to a few of you before. And I'm going to speak very briefly, since it sounded like you wanted to focus a little bit more on the technical issues, but public purpose is it's a bathroom building. We have limited concession space. We built it in a way to minimize water usage. It's not open in the winter. We don't have appliances in the facility. We are not plumbing code compliant currently. If that were ever called into question, we'd have to address it. We're also, we have porta potties that are not really readily accessible to particularly elderly people that come to events at the facility with ADA needs. Our mandate from the finance committee was to come up with a building that's as bare bones as possible, and we've tried to adhere to that. Kyle can talk to the steps. Kyle Rowan, we've worked with from Gale Associates, a company that has a lot of experience in this area. Is here to talk more about the technical issues. And if budget issues come up, I can address them. I can tell you if there is a fee involved, we can cover that. I've kind of made my case for reasons where I think the peak capacity of the stadium doesn't indicate what we'll actually use. Expect that we'll use it once a year for graduation. The next most might be a Thanksgiving Day football game, which has less attendance because of the change in the playoff structure for MIAA. At typical events, I'm probably closer to 5 to 10% capacity for a game. And then the day-to-day usage is really for practices for the athletes. We shared some information with you about the building in a packet. If you have questions about that, Kyle is here to answer any technical questions. And our goal is to give you all the information you have to address any questions, concerns you have. We feel it's an important project for the schools and for the community, and hope we can get access to connect to the sewer.
Yeah, just to start with, just the appeal does not, at least I couldn't find it, spell explicitly out that you want to appeal the decision for denial. I assume, and I just want to bring it on the records, that we should assume that's your intention. Your request is a lot about the fee level and the cost, but it implies that you probably want to appeal as first step the decision for on the denial, and then in the second step that you want to discuss the fee level.
I wanted to try to be efficient and get it all in one memo.
Yeah, it's just I think
So we did say the last sentence of our letters, we received guidance on the process for submitting the appeal, and that's the purpose of this letter.
Okay.
So
yeah, okay, just for that. Fellow commissioners, we start perhaps, as said, first on design questions. Any questions on the design?
Or do you think you'll get it to 11?
The number of stalls? The 6 and the 5, is that real?
Yeah, so with the number of toilets that we're proposing meets current code, we are applying for a state plumbing variance for the number of lavatories, so the sinks.
Will that change the maximum number or no?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It won't change the peak design flow.
Yeah.
The numbers you saw last year from the different public session were based on different plumbing codes.
Okay, right.
Yeah, and the design flow, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is based on the number of seats
Correct.
in the
existing
stadium
grandstand.
and not on the number of toilets. So in
Oh, is
worst
that
case, they
right?
could in one toilet, but they would be still the same,
The same number.
although it's counterintuitive. And also from a process perspective, under Title V, we are just receiving the Title V flow number from the Board of Health or from the Health Department.
Mhm,
We are not supposed to change that.
right,
Yeah, and
Right,
we are
it's
just
not
then
our choice.
applying our fee to that. So any change in the flow has to come from that.
Yeah, I think it's important for people listening where there's a decision where Title V is simply a calculation for sanitary sewer that boards of health administer, Commonwealth wide. And so they do this routinely. Public Works does not look at design flow for sewer. And basically Title V identifies a peak design flow so that the infrastructure can be then designed and constructed to meet that peak flow. And so that's information that's given from an application's given to the Board of Health. They review it. They then submit it to Public Works that issues a finding. In this particular case, based on the capacity constraints for the past 25 years, anything over 1,000 gallons per day is considered significant and warrants a review for the Public Works Commission. So staff will administratively deny just simply based on it would be elevated to a commission discussion. Just for
And
fact.
so, forgive me.
Yeah.
So the decision we're asked to make here, can you reiterate that?
So we administratively denied an application. If it was below the 1,000, we would have vetted it in out.
Yep.
A finding would have been issued, approval, a fee would have been assessed, paid, it would have secured that service. Because it exceeded that administrative review threshold, it was administratively denied, allowing for the appeal to go for the commission. The appeal is really the appeal of our, the administrative denial. So whether you uphold it or overturn it is sort of a question.
I think we have three options. Approve it, deny it, or request more information before making a decision.
Thank you.
So I have a couple of questions on the design. So because the whole thing sits lower, you have to pump this up.
Correct.
And you have like 467 feet of line connection, forced main.
Yep.
The forced main is a 1.5 inch. So this is the thickness of the thumb. So the pump is a grinder pump.
Mhm.
To grind the whole thing and to push it through a 1.5 inch.
Yeah, a little wider on the inner diameter.
Yeah, okay, but it's a rough.
Small, yeah.
Yeah, a rough
Keep the pressure,
approximation, over 467 feet. So, knowing teenagers and knowing what they're putting in toilets and imagining a grinder pump, any concerns and how do you imagine maintenance? Because we will not be responsible for maintaining that. Yeah, so there must be some plan to.
There will be, so should this project go forward in the way that it's proposed, and once it's constructed, part of that construction at the end, there will be an operation and maintenance plan associated with the facility. Part of that will be operation and maintenance documentation specific to the actual grinder pump station, which is obviously produced by a third-party manufacturer. They know the best management practices for their system. That will be the responsibility of the school district to keep up with. And in terms of concerns for the user group associated with this facility, this is a system we've used at least scale in our experience at many similar facilities throughout the state, specifically athletic amenities, building facilities. you'd be surprised the number of times that we actually have to use one of these systems because it's not as easy as tying into a gravity system or putting in a leach field or tight tank or something along those lines. So just in terms of concerns, we are not concerned. And that is supported by the fact that for about a decade, we've been implementing these types of systems in this type of capacity.
And that's a question more for you. In the building approval process, is there a review from engineering of the design, or is this, we just
Yeah,
don't
so let
care?
me help, as far as, at this point, generally, this is a conceptual plan as far as public works staff is concerned. So, the first step is the capacity is the first threshold. If that's, depending on that outcome, staff does not do detailed review of design until there's actually an application for service. This isn't an application for service. This was a application to review a capacity. That's what that title, that Form S was. If this is a real project, at some point, there would be a requirement, there'd be a planning review with final detailed questions or comments that would go into the review, and in it, we would state prior to, site work or whatever it might, we'd require an application, which is where we get into the detailed design of the system, looking at the engineering aspects. We've used these low pressure grind pump systems. We might have some recommendations, comments, but that would officially be done through the water sewer superintendent. And then comments would be submitted based on, these are the design issues. Usually there's a back and forth with the designer. We look at things like size of service, clean outs, bends, materials, that sort of thing, but that's a level we haven't scrutinized yet. That would come once this is more of a real project.
So when do you plan to start building this?
We'll wait till it's approved before we can do that. There's less of a concern about start time because it's not it's not on the field itself. It's not causing some space to be used that's not used now. It's a little bit of a, we would probably have to block off the area. So, we had talked about potentially starting in the fall. But if that's not feasible, we'll see. We'd also, yeah, it's a little different than the Doug White field. It has to be done at a certain specific time.
No, I just want to be sure, given that there are additional steps like planning a review and so on, and that you are aware of the different steps that need to be taken before you, let's say, suddenly put something into the ground and then.
I know, I made a note on that. Yeah, so this is, I wasn't aware of the distinction between application for capacity and use, but I have a note on that. We certainly would pause and get that as well.
Yeah. And then one more question. So at a certain point in the history, I think this was planned to be a composting system. When did that change, or what was the rationale to change it from a composting to a sewer connect system?
Composting was considered. That was a few $100,000 as an option. I think, I don't know if there's other considerations as well in terms of ongoing costs to maintain that.
Yeah, I think for that level of use, at the peak use moments, it's not necessarily the system you want to go with. And for what we're proposing, again, we think this grinder pump system is the most efficient, economical, and manageable system available.
Did you say it's not unusual for you to have to go from it's quite a hill it has to get up to? That's not an unusual design that you've had to come up with?
Nope, it's 7 feet, 7 inches to be exact in this case, from where the effluent will come out of the wet well outside of the building, make its way up to the existing structure by the access road. And no, that elevation change is not abnormal for this type of system.
Okay.
If you couldn't connect to the sewer, could you do a septic system?
You could do a tight tank septic system, you could do a leach field. All of those obviously require a lot of space in an area where we don't necessarily have it. All the area around where we're proposing this building is currently used by baseball to the one side, and then the actual athletic field, synthetic turf field on the other side. So a leach field requires a significant amount of square footage. It also needs separation from the water table, which could be an issue on this site. and would probably require raising, you know, amount above that, which would interfere with the baseball playing. And a tight tank is technically feasible, but that's also a very significant ongoing cost item on the school district to manage and regularly pump that.
Should we talk about capacity?
Yeah, I'm still, so you said is. I'm just trying to get a sense about the dollars behind the alternatives. Because in this solution here, the pump and the pipe and everything, plus the $217,000. So we are talking already about $300,000 for the sewer connection, including our fees. So I just want to get this in relation to other potential solutions in case we're looking at the capacity and say it is really tough to fit this in. Where is there an unreasonable ask to say is okay, is it really obviously too expensive to reconsider the composting or to go to a leach field or whatever? Given this design by now is already running up to $300,000.
I think a lot of that, of course, is contingent on what the fee ultimately is. And I think, again, the composting system, I can't say for sure that would work with a building of this type. That would be more in the architect's wheelhouse to make that determination. But in terms of the other systems, you know, I can't speak to the numbers on those right now. I think really it was more of a design consideration that led us down this path to begin with. Again, we are trying to keep costs at a minimum on this project, so we can get back to you with what we think those paths would look like cost-wise, but I can't come up with that estimate off the top of my head.
We also have space. I mean, we wouldn't just get rid of a baseball field. We wouldn't get rid of Memorial Field. Like, I don't know where logistically we would put this. So we would have to, if we had a leach field, we have to connect it up the hill in the woods there and knock down, I don't know if it needs trees. Like then we get into, you have to remove this a significant place away from the amenities building to even have a space that's not being used right now.
Yep, space.
I'd like to ask a question of Alan. Could you make the case for, this was automatically rejected because it exceeded 1,000?
Yeah.
Is it a day? Is that a day, by the way?
Yes, it's based on Title V is the peak design.
Yeah.
For wastewater. Assume it's gotta go somewhere.
Right.
And that's the design basis, so it's a peak day design.
So can you make the case for us about what you see professionally as the implications of saying yes to this? I realize it's sort of an automatic rejection of it, but what is it? What's the real argument against it? Where do you come down on it in terms of, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I do.
You just did, no. I can answer that.
Yeah.
It's the managing the wastewater capacity has been a chronic challenge for town. Which is why the Public Works Commission intervenes when there's a significant ask, more than a couple single family homes or something. Based on Title V. The real issue is we are subject to conditions of a permit for what we treat at our wastewater treatment plant.
Right.
So all the contributing factors weigh into what are we treating at the tail end, and that's where we are and have expressed an alarm that we're at that capacity or very near it. What does that mean? In the packet, we provided flow over the past year, or for 4 months of this year, we exceeded the NIPD's permit. It's a risk. The commission, and I provide a lot of information in the packet just to give you history, because this is complicated. But what's really important is capacity has value in this town. It limits growth and development that's desired because of its constraint. And the commission just has to be very judicious as far as what you're allowing. The questions that have been asked in the past is what's the alternative? And we've literally had situations where in order to connect, developers would have to show they could put it in a leaching area if we happen to, exceed and get a consent order from EPA. So we're just at that, every time we're approving something, you just gotta put that in context, and the community just needs to understand it's that close. And if you accept something and 3 weeks later, we end up with a knock on the door from a regulatory agency, we don't want people to be surprised.
So that is a good segue to the capacity discussion.
Ask a
Yeah.
question. Do these fees contribute to helping you increase the capacity?
The issue is that the capacity limit is the EPA, so the regulator, and they're not giving us a drop more. So what we have here, the classic, so you have a very well case on, you have ADA requirements. We have EPA limits, so we have kind of a 3-letter fight here. EPA versus ADA. We have to carefully look as where are we, and this is now the question, where are we? What other projects are coming? We have the 40B project on Baker Avenue. I think these are 37,000 gallons.
It's somewhere along that, yeah, so 20 or 30,000 gallons.
Yeah, I
If
looked,
it's a number, you remember it.
no, I specifically yesterday looked the number
Okay,
up at 37,000
yeah.
and change
Okay.
on gallons per day. Any other larger projects that are coming online you're aware of?
No, but I will sort of highlight, and people have mentioned and been concerned about the other 40B off Forest Ridge. And to be clear, that's on a Title V system. So their design has to be met with their own on-site septic or package treatment or whatever would be required. So that wouldn't impact the town's municipal system. I would go back to Bob's question, if those fees are collected to offset costs for expansion. That's the whole intent of the sewer improvement fee, to allow and try to accommodate for that additional expansion. The problem we're having is the regulatory entity is a bottleneck on, if we spent the money on upgrading our wastewater treatment plant to improve treatment and increase discharge, it would be a great solution. EPA won't let us do it. And that's frustrating. And we've actually gone down to Washington to make a case that flow, not load, with wastewater, it's load is the contaminants and pollutants, flow is water. They've used flow as a regulated control. We're continuing to fight that fight. If we won that fight, we take all the money we've collected for the sewer improvement fee and probably make improvements at the treatment plant that allow us to put more throughput. That'd be our ideal. We're also looking at MCI right now as potential opportunity for maybe a partnership with the state. But the reality is we just don't have an easy alternative right now. And we've looked at this 12 sides of how can we get this done? And it's a challenge. We're not alone. Other communities are facing this.
Does MCI have a permit?
They have a permit. They
How
have a
big is their
NIPSES
permit?
permit. It's 310,000 gallons a day. They're presently using somewhere around 50 to 60,000 gallons a day for existing use at the farm, the state police, MassDOT, they're connected to that.
If we had, it just a pro forma, right? So if we had the MCI permit in addition to our own, would that change the 1,000 gallon automatic reject, or would we?
No, it may allow us just a little bit more breathing room. And that would be up to the commission. Once we realize how much capacity is available for the town general versus redevelopment on the site versus the state existing, that's gonna determine, how much freeboard do we have? Right now, we have very little freeboard, which is why all these decisions are important. And even, you can make the right case, the wrong case. It doesn't mean we don't exceed and end up with a consent order. The EPA and state saying, what are you folks doing?
Yeah.
So just, can you quantify the risk that this project would create in bringing us to higher rolling averages? And how often does this happen? This happened 4 months out of the last 12.
This is the first time since I've been here, we've been 4 months over the permit. I would say, and I would make the case, and actually Don made a very good point the other night at the FinCom. Part of our program is to reduce infiltration, inflow into the system. These systems were not designed to be 100% tight, because 100 years ago, it was just dump into the river. When you start getting a cost per drop of treating it, it gets much more expensive. So we have been spending money to improve the infrastructure and tighten it, but it's a never ending, challenge. And some of the money that we collect from the sewer improvement fee, we do invest. That's where we get the money to try and tighten the system, but it's a combination, and I would be, I'd probably have better luck at, dictating the weather,
Yeah.
than that.
But there's definitely correlation about wet year versus dry.
There
year.
is,
Yeah, so it's,
Mother Nature is a bigger driver than any of our.
but we also don't know how many residential properties just take the roof stuff and run
Big
it
challenge for
through.
us is sump pumps, and if anybody knows of people on the municipal sewer who think it's convenient way to get rid of their stormwater, it costs the entire town. And it's really difficult. We talk about managing impervious cover, try to get into someone's basement and figure out if they're, tying in, education, but that's always a risk.
So when I was looking through the other cases where we've had the history
Yeah.
of it here, oftentimes there's a discussion with the applicant of what they can do
Mhm.
to limit peak flow.
Mhm.
So in this case, is there anything that you guys can do beyond what's in your plan to limit it, to bring it down lower?
Well, the peak flow is graduation day, really.
No, just, it sounds like it's tied to your number of seats, right? In terms of the Title V calculation,
so-
it's tied to the
But
number
in
of
terms,
seats.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
I know
saying-
your
Let
actual.
me help
Yeah.
you, or
Yeah.
at least explain, and it can work for you and the system. They've been instructed to try and minimize the scope and scale of this project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's part of the challenge we've had as far as say, we don't get into detailed design review till there's something to review. This started as a different concept. We could have spent lots of time evaluating it, but it was there were some kitchen concepts that were, this was out there, I don't know, yeah. So all these things were floated and could have increased the design basis, right? All those would have had factors that you'd have to look at Title V to say, we have a working kitchen that has values. We have this many, the stadium's larger, I don't know. That's what you would look into a Title V. So part of your reducing the size, your challenge is the stadium head count is the biggest driver. There aren't others that you've added to this mix that could be reduced, correct, or is that?
Right, I think to your point, we brought this building down to size as small as we could to still be functional for its intended purpose. So some of the things to focus on, I suppose, this building is seasonal, it will not be operational during the winter months, there will be no flow during that time. Another important point is the kitchen that has been reduced to a kitchen concessions area that will serve warm prepackaged food only. So there's no actual cooking. There's no water using appliances in that kitchen. There previously were. That's all been stripped out of the design. One other thing we have here, as was already mentioned, we are going for a reduction in the lavatory count, that code variance, which ultimately could presumably end up in less water usage to begin with.
And is it applied for that in other districts and it's been approved, correct?
Yes, we've applied for that on several similar jobs. Those have all been approved through the local boards of health and then at the state level. We don't technically need approval from the Board of Health, but we request a letter of support for that reduction. We have done so in this town with your Board of Health as of a couple weeks ago. And once we hopefully receive that, we'll move forward with the state variance request. But another item, I
So
think,
that's a variance on the
Lavatory.
lavatory, it's not variance on the flow.
it's not a variance on the toilets. So there's a required number of toilets and a required number of sinks per the current map.
Yeah, but there's also under, I think it's, what was it, 2 or 3
Yeah.
from Title V. The table is for the flow.
We're not requesting a reduction in that. You
Right.
can't.
You
Right.
can,
If you had
with
less
410,
seats, right?
if you look at section 410 following, and there's actually 416 is a specific variance allowance or variance procedure for schools. So if you look at I would encourage you to look 410 following.
Mhm.
Because you could build the story. Again, for us is we take the Title V flow that is reported to us by the Board of Health here, yeah? And the Title V gives you the opportunity to reduce that by different arguments. One argument in these sections is it's just an extension of an existing system,
Mhm.
which you could potentially say it's just the extension of the highway, the high school, because actually you're moving capacity downhill. Yeah, that people, instead of going up there, just
Right,
using it
right.
down. So you see it as one system. So that could be one way to look at it. The another way is that actually the 416 specifically for schools gives a variance allowance for the Board of Health to say, okay, there's a larger strategic interest to make a variance to this if this whole thing is metered. And this thing is metered because we know the flow in from the water. So we have a meter.
Mhm.
So you can build an argument, there's a meter, and you can look at your historic flow and then deal with, like, get a variance to the 5,000 plus gallons per day.
Mhm.
So I get a sense you haven't looked at it and haven't used that, but I think that would be one way shy of, let's say, is there a complete different scenario by not
Can you
connecting?
build
Is there some middle ground where the local authorizing authority for Title V is the Board of Health here? We cannot play around with that number.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I give you enough hints
Mhm.
to say, read these sections 410 following, specifically 416. Can you build a story to the Board of Health to cut that number down? And that helps you then automatically also on the fees, and helps you on our discussion is, does this fit in our capacity? So every drop less, and when you build a story about how much is the school actually using today versus where's the permit and how much is shifted,
Mhm.
that could also help.
So how
Right.
much is the school permitted and how much are they actually using? I think
Mhm.
that's part of the story that.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of, that I understand this is more for the Board of Health in this instance, but in reality, for the code, it's based off of the number of seats in the existing grandstand, which is about 1,800 seats. The school estimates that those seats fill up to half capacity, 50% twice a year. Thanksgiving football game, graduation, which would be 900. The other days, regular games, regular use, you can cut that down to something closer to 10%, which is what we included in this letter here, which would bring us down to about, call it 180 seats, which brings you below 1,000 gallons per day by that same calculation. So that's an important nuance, and perhaps that's a better approach.
Yeah,
rather than
but again, we
to-
can't play around on the Title V flow.
Right.
The
no, I
only
understand.
thing we could play around theoretically is to say is we are willing to give you a discount to the fee. But we traditionally don't do this, because if we do it for one case, a discount on the fee,
Mhm.
then the next
Line up.
comes.
So we might really
Yeah.
need that.
So
Yeah.
we're typically strict on the per gallon fee, but hopefully guide an applicant towards measures to still reduce the
Mhm.
cost or have mitigating factors like you pointed out. Is like, can you reduce it, either not connect at all or
Metering.
demonstrate that it's
Yeah.
just not that volume?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because if we have one rainy summer again, we're above our thing again. Yeah, that's our challenge. That's at least my fear. So I think it's perhaps we open it to the public for some questions and then come back again, because we touched a lot of things in this one. Don, you have a question?
Yeah, Don Kupka, 39 Devon Street, speaking for myself. Following up on Sven's point, excellent point about the opportunities within the code to reduce. The building code overall, the architect, the one that the architects follow, dictates that you're designing to the capacity of the seating, but it also says that you can propose a compliance alternative. And in this case, you can say, well, it's, I think anyone would agree, we have a hardship, we can't spend $300,000 on a connection, that's ridiculous. But at 1,000 gallons per day, it's a reasonable fee, I'm assuming. And so you design to that, and then you bring that to the building inspector and say, what we'd like to do is put in these handicapped accessible stalls and have a map and a sign that says, if these are busy, use the ones in the high school as a compliance alternative. That way you meet the ADA code and you don't spend lots of money on permitting fees and things. So, and I would strongly encourage, I made the same comment last year, but strongly encourage the design team
Is the
to
high school
consider
even open?
compliance alternatives.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be compliant with the plumbing code. It would help with ADA compliance.
But the plumbing code is about the capacity to design to. The building inspector sets the capacity. That's how it's done. It's not about counting the seats. Because some days you might have 1,800 seat facility, might have 4,000 people standing. So it's up to the building inspector to set the design capacity. And then you have to make sure that all the other aspects meet that capacity. So the building inspector could say, yeah, I'll give you a capacity of a limit of 180 people for this facility. And the compliance alternative is a map with a sign pointing directly right where the bathrooms are in the high school.
Yeah, just also and so if you look at the Title V table, you could see that by shifting from a per person gallon measurement to a seat measurement, they already assume somewhere of a 5 to 15% utilization rate. So if you have a full person here, the whole day there, this is like 60 plus gallons per day. If you look at the different kind of uses, so them saying it's 3 gallons, this is roughly 5%. And then if they have other uses, you see, like if you compare it with the school use, which is about, I think, 20 gallons per day for a normal school. So 3 gallons is about a 7, so that's about 14%. So you see the range is already that they assume a capacity of between 5 and 14%. So therefore, I see all your arguments, but I'm again more coming as much as I love to change the number. The local authorizing authority is the Board of Health, and we can't change that 5,000 gallon. And if you stick to the 5,000 gallon, we must have a very, very deep discussion as where do we fit this in? And do we want to do this? What is the opportunity cost or not? So that's, I want to give you tips in
So,
getting this number down.
Have you had any conversation with the Board of Health at all yet?
Yeah, we actually had a discussion back in March,
Yeah.
earlier on in the design of this project, and we had all the stakeholders. We coordinated with the town planner, Elizabeth Hurley, I believe is her name. We organized a meeting with her and had all the relevant stakeholders on a call for that. Ms.
That's for
Deneen was
Public
present.
Works.
What's that?
Except for Public Works.
No, they were on.
Oh, they were.
There,
Yep.
this came up, again, as I mentioned, recently, it was identified as a need, and until Public Works has a number.
Mhm.
Now, this is which is surprising. What is an amenities building capacity? We don't have many.
Mhm.
So it was sort of a surprise when we saw it was 5,000 gallons a day. It was,
I think it's too much.
can I ask if you've worked on a lot of these systems around the state, or a bunch of these systems around the state? 2 questions. One, have you ever seen a system where they supplemented a building that was ADA compliant with a few porta potties? I don't know what the technical term is, outside, literally adjacent to them. Because face it, this boys soccer team doesn't need a really nice bathroom in the fall. Have you ever had a mix like that?
Not
this
in
work that
the design process that we would have been involved in. We might have designed a building and then maybe they brought porta potties in later,
Okay,
but we wouldn't be aware of that. So I
okay,
can't say
I'm
for
just
sure.
brainstorming ways to.
and I want to
reduce
say, Dave, again, what's unusual, but it's becoming more and more, you're gonna see this as you go across the state, this capacity that we've been dealing with is starting to get realized in other communities. But it would be unusual to design a hybrid, because usually capacity isn't that significant
Right.
a challenge. So I think typical.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do a plumbing, you're gonna expand it
Do it
to
all.
meet the need. That would be a typical.
I mean, I would just add a couple of things. I mean, all the other dual county schools that Concord Carlisle's in conference with have an amenities building or access to public
Yeah.
restrooms right next to their fields. I also think, separate the fee piece, which honestly I care less about. It's gonna be from one town pocket to another. It doesn't affect the taxpayers. It's either gonna be coming out of a school budget, and helping you fund your infrastructure, or you get less to fund your infrastructure. We have the money to cover the fee if it's the full fee. So I don't want that to be a reason that anything pauses today. We don't, that's a secondary consideration to us. I think the reality is that our usage, I can check this. I can't say for sure. I'll be honest. I don't know for sure, but I would suspect that all of our people who come to graduation go in the building anyways. We're not going to use the restroom any more than we do now. People who come to games, it might be in the athletes that use it every day instead of going in the building. I mean, most people avoid the porta potties, most people do. And so, I think our usage is actually, the question of real impact in your capacity, I think it's gonna be way, way less, than we anticipate. And if it helps to have an official number from the Board of Health, that's kind of what I'm hearing. That's a different issue. But my sense is you're not actually gonna have much more volume coming your way.
Any other questions from the public? Not in the room. Anyone online?
Bob, do we have any questions online you can see?
No, I'm just scrolling down the list to make sure I didn't miss anybody, but no, we don't.
Okay. All right. So that is now just for the four of us. Just think it's, what are we doing? I don't know, anyone has a thought before we put a motion
I
out?
feel like, we have dealt with issues of wastewater capacity before, so it's been, for us, this is a scary topic. We hear about the possibility of a consent order and what that would mean from the town. A moratorium would be terrible. Now, will this project put us over that? It's doubtful, but it would be great to have like solid numbers from the Board of Health. If you guys can take some of the suggestions that you've gotten from this and maybe just so that I hate to make a decision today that looks really bad a few years from now. I feel like it happens every so often and I don't want to be a part of that. But getting the numbers corrected and coming back to us so we can have a fuller discussion, and then making sure that from now on, you're in very close communication with Public Works, especially about the planning and design. I think you took notes about that going forward, but like the back and forth to create mitigating systems to make sure that you're doing everything possible to keep that wastewater down would be really helpful for us to know.
I think that you make good arguments on, the actual impact is probably much lower than that, the amount that's there. I think it'd be very helpful to have the conversation that's been suggested for everybody, sort of make sure that, it looks like it's gonna be, the only issue I know is timing, right? So you have,
What? The timing is not an issue.
but they have town meeting, right? So,
But
yeah,
in a certain way with town meeting, they can go in with the worst case.
yeah.
They say, this is the worst case, and see if they get approval for the worst case. Again, this is not a decision where.
Yeah, this doesn't prevent you from going
So
to town meeting.
everything we're trying is more or less, hopefully reducing the cost
Yeah,
Mhm.
of this thing, than increasing it. Yeah,
yeah.
They can't go up, but you mean in terms of the fee, they have a design, so.
We have a
I-
design.
I assume they
We
have
have
a
to-
budget based on that design. If you can come back with numbers that are, I guess, more palatable in terms of the total flow because of the arguments you may make to the Board of Health. To me, it's very helpful.
And to meet Alan's needs.
Yeah.
So on my personal view is, I rank this a little kind of a priority on the different options. So the ideal solution would be, we would not need to connect that damn thing.
Mm.
Yeah, because we have proven
Mm.
times where we are over capacity. So for me, it would be kind of, can you at least do some reasonable check or design, is a composting or any other solution something, an unreasonable ask or unreasonable design that would drive up the cost too much, and because of that, it would be
Mhm.
unreasonable. But we right now know this thing is costs with pump, pipe, and fee is a $300,000 cost. Yeah, so everything on the alternative should be either in the same order of magnitude or less. So then I would say it's a reasonable ask.
On top of the budget that they have.
Yeah, right now, though, they have about $80,000 in budget on the infrastructure, and then you're saying you find a $217,000 fee. So in combined, this is 300,000 that is
Mhm.
sitting there if this would go ahead with this capacity
Mhm.
and this design.
Right, so you're saying
So-
if they did composting or if they did a leach field,
Then,
it would be less than that? It would-
well, then there's no sewer connection.
Yes, no, I
Yeah,
understand.
so is the cost of that less than 300,000
Right.
or not?
Mhm.
That's the comparison. That would be my kind of priority number one, not to have a connection. Then priority number two would be everything that we discussed is ways to reduce the flow number, because we know whatever we are moving anyway, students from uphill, downhill, in the end, it's the same system. In the end, it's netting out. If a few more go potty, that we're just waiting for 3 hours until they could go home or whatever. So there will be some net plus, but I agree, I feel 5,000 seems to be super high.
Mhm.
Yeah, but that needs to be done by the Board of Health with these sections you pointed to. So that would be level 2. And level 3 would be, you come back and say, all of that didn't work. It's still 5,000 gallons a day. And then we have to have, say, a deep discussion.
Philosophical
about it.
conversation.
I mean, if we were to pursue item 2, we don't control the decision that the Board of Health makes. Certainly, you can make a compelling case. I mean, it's clear to us, we're not gonna use anywhere near 5,000 gallons, and hopefully we can give them information to see that. But to your point about the cost, if we end up with a lower number, there's no way a compost or tight tank is gonna be anywhere close to $50,000. It's gonna be a lot more money, so your option 1 is no longer, it's not an apples to apples.
So how much is it more than $300,000?
What's that?
Is it more than $300,000?
No, but when we come back with the reduced, if we do come back with reduced.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
Then it'll be
Yeah.
very different.
Yeah, I see your plan, but again, I think it's whatever we don't need to connect because of our EPA issue.
Mhm.
That's for me a higher priority, but
Mhm.
again, the other commissioners might think differently. It's how I think is, given the EPA constraints we have.
Yeah.
It has not on the money side, yeah. So anyone want to put their head out for a motion?
What were our choices again?
Approve or
Delay.
deny the-
I
Approve,
think is we could also
deny, delay.
own decision and ask for updated,
I make a motion to postpone this decision and ask for updated numbers from the Board of Health
or updated design.
and an updated design
Or,
or an updated.
and or, so.
I think you heard the theme. Yeah,
No, I think
That's
it's
my
pretty
motion.
straightforward.
okay, any
I
second,
second it.
any discussions needed on this? No?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimously postponed, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Next meeting is end of June, yeah?
June 25th.
Okay.
Sorry, submit 2 weeks before that, I assume.
If you could keep Alan just up to date and Alan and his team up to date on the different steps.
Yep.
It's very important, I think, in this thing to be in close communication. Yeah, and often someone knows more, and we don't want you in a situation where you say, oh, somebody didn't tell us X, Y, and Z. Yeah, so they,
So let's just to be clear, the real issue is a design-based system, which has got to go through the Board of Health. So Melanie Deneen would be a key person. We're not gonna second guess the health department's sort of stamp of approval. That's, you know, the administrative stuff on the design basis, things like that, that's really where we get into once it's, you know, what direction you're going. So I think it's when the real issue is whatever you can do with the Board of Health, with the exemption and, you know, opportunities would be helpful.
If they end up below 1,000 with them, does that mean?
oh, that would help.
Oh, yeah, well,
Very good, yeah. Yeah.
It would be administrative,
Never-
that
We would not see us again.
Right.
would be ideal.
Yes, it would.
You don't want to see us again? Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming.
Can I ask a quick question? Is there any item then, or warrant item going to town meeting related to this?
Yes.
Yes,
That could happen. The town is being asked to vote what?
to approve a budget.
The
for
money,
this-
the
The
borrowing.
money,
So
borrowing.
the money will be approved, even though there may be no permission.
It's up to,
That's okay.
it's not our decision. What we bring is the facts to the town.
Okay,
It won't be spent if it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay, all right.
if it's not approved, it's not spent, yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Okay, thank you. So now, we have to speed up a little bit. I think the next one is a little bit faster. The snow and ice removal on the, I have difficulty pronouncing that place.
Rothermel Place.
Rothermel Place, Rothermel Place. I think Keith is listening, but I think we got quite a good summary here from, Al McCloskey on where we are on this. Is he online?
Aaron's online. Yep, Aaron, can you, can we see
Yes.
or hear you? Okay, great, we can hear him.
I'm online.
Hi, Aaron, do you want to offer anything? I guess just to set the table,
Yes,
there was a meeting based on, the commission's request, sort of sidebar with you to make sure and look at the operations issues relating to the specific, you know, request. There were some questions as far as, you know, how it would work into, more routine operations. And I know you met with, Keith, I believe, and, you know, went over a concept that you found was, based on operations side, acceptable. And Keith had provided a memo, a request for snow and ice removal on Rothmel Place for discussion between Aspet River Homes and Representative Concord Public Works, which characterized, you know, the result of that meeting. And that's what that's what the commission is seeing. Aaron, I don't know if you want to offer anything in addition to that from a perspective from literally just the operations side or not.
yes, Alan, that's correct. I met with the applicants a few weeks ago. We reviewed a few documents, an updated set of plans, updated post the last Public Works Commission meeting based on some comments that were made, discussed operationally how the work could be done, and they updated the memo which was provided to the Public Works Commission in this month's packet that outlines our discussion and what we would be able to do and services that we would be able to provide with our existing program.
But 10 minutes later, you see it in Joint Base Andrews. That's
Who's
his.
that?
He does not get on Air Force One. And my.
All right, Air Force One, okay. I think this is a major progress to where we were, definitely. Any questions?
Was there, I think there was talk of maybe like doing this, but evaluating it as terms of like.
Yeah, so, yeah. So I have a couple of questions before we go that far. So one is, we definitely clear in point 4, that there should be no overnight parking. I'm concerned that it still will happen. And I want to be clear that if there's people parking overnight in a snow emergency and we're coming with our trucks, we are not clearing this thing at that moment. We are not removing the cars, then we just turn around and go. Yeah, I think,
Okay, yeah.
I I would say that that would be important for me, that otherwise the residents, yeah. And then one other thing, on, if you look at the map, at the far end, if you have the hammer. So I can imagine that at the end of the hammer towards the house, that there will be snow piled up.
Mhm.
And that looks damn close to a house, and I'm concerned that, it could turn out that there might be too much snow there and could generate damage. So my thought was, with these two things, if we would say, we give kind of a temporary approval for the first winter after completion, along these 7 points, and adjust point 4 is if the cars parked, we are not plowing. And then see how the first winter goes, and if everything is fine, everyone behaves, or if some people need to get kind of reminded, then we can make a more permanent solution. That was what I was thinking, but again,
Let me offer, could you do a conditional?
whatever you call it, so what's the condition?
Well, the condition would be that, there are no unintended sort of, operation upsets that we would then bring to the commission
Okay,
for reevaluation. That way,
Yeah.
we would raise it as an issue.
Yep.
The, housing group would be able to attend and have a voice, but that way we trigger it. It's not something
Okay.
that's just automatic, and who knows if there's a light winter.
Sure.
yeah,
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 yeah.
okay, so
Okay.
condition,
I like
so
that.
whatever that wording is, so can someone try to word that?
Well, I would suggest you're gonna put another item or two other items, you know, so under 4, you have 8 is if cars are parked, and, prohibiting the, required snow and ice, operations, Public Works would not, perform that service,
Who's the English speaker who can summarize this?
Concise.
The first one.
Steve Dukran's always concise.
Andrea, you're normally good at this.
I missed the first part though. Okay, I'll give it a shot. I hereby make a motion to authorize Concord Public Works to perform snow and ice removal services along the proposed private way identified as Rothermel Place in accordance with the town's snow and ice removal from town's private ways policy, as further detailed in the description of services outlined in the memorandum for discussion dated April 29th.
Condition to,
Conditional to Public Works will not remove if. Conditional to, if cars are parked in the way of the plows will not perform their duty.
What if we said condition to comply, conditioned by
Condition.
compliance with the
There you
That's
go.
right, because it's not,
7 steps
it's
out,
already identified,
Okay.
correct.
yeah, condition to,
7 steps out,
7 steps out.
whatever you call this thing.
okay,
Memo 429.
Memo 42925.
I second.
Okay.
But
any discussion?
But you also wanted in subject to, no unanticipated.
And no, and
Is subject to, yeah.
Yeah, that was the next thing, which I would agree is if we find there's a problem, we want to be able to flag.
the unexpected,
So you want to do a 1 year?
Conditions or-
no, he's trying to do a conditional,
That is an-
Approval.
anytime.
so that, let's say 3 years down the road, can,
I'll ask them.
Aaron, do you have any thoughts as far as,
You guys know, you guys stay.
the intent is if there is an upset that it's hard for us to avoid, where in the Hammerhead, the snow buildup just becomes problematic. It's not as simple as we had hoped, and we flagged it. We would have to raise that to the Public Works Commission and they could reevaluate this.
or any other problem.
Well, yeah, Alan, what we had talked about with the applicant during the meeting was that they would be responsible for any snow removal, like hauling of snow if there was buildup, and any handwork that was done. We would only do plowing and de-icing. So that was the understanding with the applicant.
Okay, and Sven, if you look at condition 5,
To move excess snow, okay. That's a good point.
Okay, so that's up to us to raise that to
So I-
their attention. Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay,
so I
then
think
we can do-
operationally that captures, I think, the intent of what we're talking
Okay,
about.
then we say it's, approval condition to,
Compliance.
compliance with that memo.
yeah.
All right,
That's covered.
second on that one,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimously, conditionally approved.
Keith is online. I didn't know if you wanted to. hear.
Yeah,
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair and members. Happy to take yes for an answer and not say anything. It was a great opportunity and I want to thank Aaron for meeting with Rick Eifler from the Housing Authority and myself. The authorship of this revised request goes to Rick, who was on the call earlier but had another engagement at 5 o'clock. But Rick is on the Housing Authority and will be in a position as one of the condo association members to see to it that this agreement is carried out. So thank you very much for your vote today. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for keeping up with us.
Yeah, really.
Okay,
You're welcome. Thank you.
next agenda item, the temporary repair of private way, Dover and Darton. We had continued the discussion from last time because it was clear from town council that the betterment cannot be assessed to the broader community, just to that small group of 13. And that of course drives the price up for the smaller group. And we asked the applicant to take it in, think about it and come back. Applicant is in the room. I think in the meantime, we heard from 2 signatories that they withdraw the support of this.
Yes, we submitted emails. So just to clarify, there was petitioners, which was a majority of the 13 parcels that were identified early on, signed it, initiated the petition. There's a designated spokesperson. So that's to make sure that staff and commission aren't, sort of herding cats generally. And the request was from the commission to have the neighborhood sort of understand what is it that you really want. And, I had talked with the Whalens, who are the people for, the project shortly after the FinCom meeting, and we talked about certain ideas, but it was also, I've talked to some other residents who've been expressing interest in better understanding, where we're headed. So I think the onus was on the spokespeople to come back and report and I guess update the commission as far as what their understanding is. And, I think there are implications because there is this petition, which has its own track, but we've also discussed an article, and we'll be talking about, which was for borrowing authorization at the time made with an understanding that this may be realized sooner rather than later with a little bit more clarity, but those are the 2 issues in front of the committee.
Perhaps I would like to invite you up front here and update us on.
Jim Whalen, 65 Dover Street. I'm the spokesperson for the petition. We had an engineer privately review what the town had done. So at this point, what we'd like to do is our legal counsel would like to set up a meeting with Alan and the town council. Just to kind of, again, get together and discuss exactly what the options are going to be going forward. We would like the commission at this point to hold off on any vote until we've had said meeting. And we would also like the DPW to continue with the town meeting article.
Okay, so.
Is that?
It would probably be helpful to know what the article relates to.
The article is that.
For borrowing of $350,000 for this project. So what's interesting is the question is, does that provide clarity to what we had heard from the meeting. And that was the ask of the spokespeople, come back, provide us with some sort of update. Basically, this is unusual in that we've also heard from two of the original properties since then, and I'm not sure. Has there been just a question, has there been conversations with the other abutters and what's your understanding as the spokesperson?
So the two people that are new to the neighborhood have been informed of the issue prior, that there was given warning prior to their purchase. The people who were selling the property to them had the petition. So at that point, we're still discussing exactly how we want to move forward with it.
So you
So we're gonna be-
still take the position, you still have the 2/3 of signature?
Well, we discussed, again, this is something that we wanted to discuss with Alan and the town. The town now is close to owning 2 of the properties. And our legal counsel discussed with the town legal counsel about whether the town properties were actually gonna be in the affirmative or not. And that's something that we would like to bring up, because there's 2 properties that are actually soon to be town. One is gonna be soon to be town owned, the other one is town owned on Darton Street.
Okay, we're, what, 2 weeks away from town meeting? I have a thought, but before I voice that, any,
I'm trying to play this out in my mind. This and a warrant item comes to me as a taxpayer at the town, saying that the town wants to, who's
so the mechanism is we take
Town.
we take the debt and then we assign a betterment to the 13 properties to pay us back.
which is now 11 properties, right?
No, it's if you have 2/3, then these 2/3 define the betterment, or we can for the 100, if they like it or not. But the 100% is now a smaller group than in the original application where the proposal was the betterment should be assigned to over, I think, 70 or something in that order of magnitude of.
So
But-
I may ask.
But the original proposal was for 80 grand, right? I mean, that's
And
not,
that was,
That's not the-
Design was
Yeah, that-
Right,
the
that's-
town design,
right.
we don't
No,
have a number.
I,
on that.
right, I understand, but we don't have a petition for whatever it is, the larger one, so we don't
so
have
the
that.
larger one is right now.
We don't have it.
Something like a 300, we don't have
Right.
it, yeah, so.
Right, and we don't, so what we go to the town for on the warrant, we did that as sort of prophylactic, right? We said a placeholder, right, in case we needed it. But you can't, I mean, I can't go to the town, and you can't ask them, we don't even have a plan, right?
Yeah.
So I think the answer is no on the
On
warrant
warrant,
article,
yeah.
yeah, you don't have a project.
And I think there was discussion last time and some of your neighbors who decided not to, who wrote letters about their concerns about this current plan. I think there was we talked about there was a benefit to like withdrawing this particular warrant article and then getting more buy-in from more of the people in the neighborhood. Because then I think you could spread the betterment out to more people, right? The cost of the
That was the
betterment.
concept that was discussed.
Yeah, that was, so, I mean, and it sounds like people, I mean, I realize it's a lot of work to go to more people to ask them to cooperate with this, but it might be worth it. Because the more comprehensive plan would just do such a better job of fixing the problems in that neighborhood.
So
I think that again kind of lies in the fact that we have the issue with Dover Street and there's a larger watershed issue that's going on there.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, granted that I think the wider petition would address the larger watershed issue. But again, to your point, we're looking for the fix at the corner of Dover and Darton. And that was originally the cost estimate was 83. The town came up with a larger plan of 350. Again, open, we're not sure exactly the pricing because it was not the specifics. And so we don't really know what the final cost will be.
I think there are two things we have to consider. One is the warrant article. The other one is the petition as such. And I think, so splitting, so I generally agree with what you're saying, is like, it's very hard to sell this at town meeting if there's not something concrete, and we cannot say, does the neighborhood has 66% or not, and all of it, maybe we'll just, people will look at this and maybe happily vote against this, so, and then, then it's hard to get back next year. But that doesn't keep us from just still keep the petition open and defer a decision on the petition until this whole thing is baked properly. My only concern of keeping the petition open, I must be clear, is it eats resources at the Public Works Department. And we will have a lot of implementation going on for the new sewer system and for the roads that are coming. So I'm a bit concerned how much that eats on resources.
What does it mean to keep the petition open? What does that mean?
Well, we are not more or less rejecting it.
Yeah.
And we keep that topic open until there's either the petitioner comes and says, okay, they're withdrawing it, or they're coming with, together with Public Works, with a different solution, and there's a way, an agreed way with the neighborhood with 66% of the votes, how the betterment is assigned.
I have a technical question. Can a betterment be assigned or charged to people if they don't agree? Yes. If they don't say yes? Could the town say, we gotta fix this? We're spending the money and we're gonna bill you.
But that's private property, it's a different.
The petition is written in a very specific language to address this issue at White Pond. That's why I think it would probably be better for legal, the town council and our council to kind of discuss it with Alan present.
Like this we had an engineer review it, Courtney Whalen, 65 Dover, coast spokesperson. We had the engineer kind of review it, and we have some questions just because the project did jump from like an $80,000 project to a $350,000 project. And that if it's only amongst 13 households, then that was it's almost 5 times the cost. So, we'd like to just have a discussion with Alan and engineering and the, and legal
Yeah,
to.
but today we have to make a decision on the article, so we have a draft motion sitting here that.
What's the motion? What's the motion?
You want to read the second
Sure,
one?
I'll read that. So I hereby make a motion to defer any further action on this petition unless there is evidence that a majority of direct abutters can demonstrate they have come to an agreement as to the preferred scope of work with a defensible betterment framework in keeping with any required update or modifications made by staff with respect to a probable cost estimate. Furthermore, notify the town moderator that the commission will not move Article 32 at the 2025 annual town meeting.
Let's say no to the article, the one. Do you have any thoughts?
I think it says no to both, right?
It says defer on the petition and no, and withdrawing the Article 32.
Okay. Let's see, different.
Defer the action. We have a motion.
Make that, is that a motion?
I made that motion.
I'll second it.
So any discussion?
So that keeps the petition open.
That keeps the petition open.
I just want to ask Alan, are you okay with that?
You want, yeah.
Yeah, I would, before you, there's some other members, they'd like to open it up. I'm just gonna volunteer the following because I'm pretty direct. I'm a little surprised with this proposal and that everything the town has done has been as transparent as possible. I'm finding this ask is a little unusual. We've had no conversation. Everything we've done to this date was communication. I've heard from other abutters, and I'm not convinced there's a compelling case being made. But again, it's not me, it's the commission. Alan could sit down with town council. That's a cost to the town. With your council. It's an interesting ask. Would we be willing to do that for an improved system? I've already said my case. And I think we made a compelling case of the original proposal. We believe was just inadequate. Now, we've done a lot, including the town investing significant money through the ARPA funds to try and get this to a project that could work. Still haven't heard it. but I just find the challenge is we have a bylaw that was based on a certain understanding. We have a framework of applications, which was based on a certain understanding. And even to this point of a spokesperson is intended to represent the neighborhood for convenience. I'm concerned I'm not hearing that completely. I'm concerned because what I've
You're
heard,
not hearing what?
the message that I've been hearing from the hearing we had, neighborhood outreach, and people contacting us. So I think there's a disconnect and I'd love to see it, that it's my understanding, but that's gonna take some time. And I can guarantee this, there's not gonna be action in the next couple of weeks that are gonna allow us insight into town property somehow being, contribution, especially with town that property we don't own. But that's just my.
So you would prefer to,
Could we withdraw could we urge them to withdraw the petition and then bring
We
back
can-
a petition that involves more people?
I
More
think
buy-in?
the way you just posed it really puts the onus on, it can always be withdrawn. The time sensitive action is the town warrant. And it's your position, not the petitioner's or spokesperson's position that matters. The spokesperson can continue, and we will continue to work with a spokesperson in neighborhood. But I'm gonna suggest this entire process is gonna probably result in us reimagining how we do this in White Pond. And I still think there's an opportunity to do something successfully over there.
How do you think we get to that point though? Like by,
There's gonna be ongoing conversation, and I think that's my interest, and I've already made that commitment. I keep to my word. I'm gonna work with the neighborhood because I think there's a problem. We heard a compelling case from the neighborhood, there's a problem. What we didn't hear is consensus on what they thought was the right approach moving forward.
so you prefer to have the petition still open, or do you prefer?
The petition can stay open because it's
Okay.
really up to the original, we can go back and they can massage it. Because if it can't get a compelling case made, they're not gonna come forward with it. I'd imagine it may
Okay.
evolve and then they withdraw and.
So the motion as such is okay for you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just want to say one more thing too. I think you might have the impression that if you withdraw the petition, that stops the process, but I think it would actually help you propel forward with the process of getting more buy-in from your entire community and getting more people on board with this. It's just something to think about when you talk with your council and town council. I think there's a path forward, and I think actually withdrawing the petition might be the best way to get past that.
So are we okay to keep this thing open, but withdraw this, or you want to reject this whole in a?
Seems like it doesn't
totality?
make much difference.
It's kind of like, we thought it was okay.
It's okay to
you
leave.
wanted to hear from, other,
You wanna invite-
there's neighbors here. You can hear those
Yeah,
comments.
sure.
Okay, just quick, very quick, yeah?
I don't have to. Speak. It's
No, no,
okay.
no, please. No, please.
All right, so I'm Jim Reynolds. I live at 20 Darden. I which I purchased on March 4th. We're not even unpacked yet. And all of this is going on, and so I was one of the people who alerted the Waylands that I did not, first of all, I had not signed it. The property owner before me signed it. I wanted to withdraw my name, not out of opposition, and I also want to recognize the amount of work that's had to go in to get us this far. The fact that we've been having this conversation means a lot of people did a lot of work. They did a lot of work in other towns, and I appreciate all that. But trying to wrap my head around all of this in 60 days, and we got town meeting to him, I'm just like, So I'm not the guy to ask. Unfortunately, as I understand it, the plan involves an easement across my property, which we've already granted, and laying a pipe, underneath our property to go into it. That's an awful lot to happen and to ask us to take a position on as quickly as this. So there's that. Look, if we can't ever get anybody else involved, then talking about $350,000 is nuts. If it's 13 of us, it's 70 or whatever it is, or that's it. We just have to do the best we can. Can I get more, you know, I mean, all of those things go in my head, and I haven't even met the neighbors yet. So, I mean, that's where I am. I'm not ready to proceed. I don't oppose this. I just don't have enough information yet.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You have a motion?
We have a motion.
We have a second.
We have a second.
Are you comfortable or uncomfortable?
What do you
You
want
wanna
to do?
just, you wanna just
I can withdraw the motion.
reject it?
You have a different motion?
You wanna reject it and have them start clean?
I don't know, it's, again, it's, you have to think, but I'm starting to think a clean start might be best. How about,
Can we deny
but
the
on the
petition?
other end, we put ARPA money in this thing.
We did? Or we
Oh, we
would?
put ARPA money in it. We did
Where is that?
into the design, I
It's already
think.
spent.
In the design.
It's already spent?
Yeah.
I think I would just volunteer, it's kind of a technicality, but I
Yeah,
don't see any.
The first
harm.
motion is not, we cannot, the first motion is we request the petitioner to withdraw.
Yes, you can ask, that's the first, and the other is you can have it continued. Pending additional information, and that's really your, you know, the call. I can tell you one way or another, we need to be unraveling this and staff is gonna be involved, because if it's not. That petition is gonna be the next one, and I'm willing to, you know, sort of keep an option open if for some reason. With new abutters and better information as far as the full cost. Remember, there is a 2-year design basis plan that will function for 2 years design. And if the abutters have a majority of people who want to pay for that and understand the implications, then that's the original petition and that could be realized.
I think there's some advantage to keep that petition open.
Yeah.
Because we have an ongoing history, we had a hearing,
Yes,
all
yes,
of
yeah,
that.
I think
So in that sense, I could get my arms around the current motion, but we definitely, with that, we withdraw Article 32.
Yep.
So
Okay with that.
all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the petition is still open, but we will withdraw Article 32. 32 is written here. Okay. Thank you. Town meeting prep. So we have 25 minutes left. The good thing is, oh well, we probably have to short.
Sorry, that's okay. I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, town meeting prep. Where do we start?
Yeah, so basically the purpose of this meeting is to.
There, yeah.
Identify, update the commission. On. Where we stand with those articles that are most interest to Public Works. And what we have, new information is what articles have been put on the consent calendar, and that's important. In essence, all of our more routine articles, have been put on the consent calendar. And a reminder is that the water, enterprise, the sewer enterprise, sewer improvement fund, the solid waste recycling fund. Unless 10 people at town meeting decide they want to hear more about those particular programs, they will get voted the first night without a formal presentation. Formal presentations, we are well aware of and been informed by the moderator that Article 8, the debt exclusion for road maintenance, that's $27.5 million request. Is going to be provided an opportunity for a presentation. To date, you know, Sven's worked closely with staff on a number of presentations we've been giving. But generally speaking, at town meeting, the moderator prefers to have a commissioner present. And I think it's just important just to have the commission determine, you know, who's going to present and comfort level. And, you know, this is a very important one. And in fact, the moderator's already given us indication that this article may be given 8 to 10 minutes for a presentation because it's so important. So that's one item. You know, if we have a volunteer who is willing to present.
For number 8.
For.
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable with Ben.
I like this volunteer.
And so, you know, that's, you know, great news because it's that important and the moderators identified it.
And she said it'll be the second article on Monday.
This will be right Monday, the second article.
Can you
Yes.
do that? Can you do that? Seriously, can you present?
He's
on that?
done it, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe I had a dry run this morning with the League of Women Voters.
So, next article 9, I'm just going through the list, is basically the capital improvements in debt. That's important because we have a lot of our general fund capital projects will be funded through that. That is something that would be presented through, you know, the town manager. I just highlight it because, you know, that's an important source of funds for a lot of our capital initiatives.
Yeah. And if 8 doesn't go through, that changes 9, so they need to be right. beside
Correct,
each
and
other,
that's
yeah.
one of the reasons to thank you for bringing attention, and it's important that some of the capital plan in Article 9 will not be necessary if Article 8 passes.
Yeah, so
And so-
Terry will adjust it.
Correct. Then, the amenities building, we just heard, there's gonna be a question, and just so you realize, the commission can weigh in on any of the articles that are presented collectively. If you just determine you have a position you want to take or make, or a comment you want to make. We just need to advise the moderator that you're asking for, you know, sort of an opportunity to speak to the article. And it can be done at the podium or as a representative from the commission or at the microphone. But that's something which I don't know if the commission has an interest in, you know, speaking to the amenities building because of, you know.
I think you will face a question.
I imagine there will be.
So I think you should be prepared for potential questions that people say, what is going on? We read something in the bridge and we don't get what's going on. So, I personally, I would say this is still a pending ongoing process. So for me, it doesn't feel necessary to make an official statement in the one, because as said before, the decision here is different than the decision we need to do, but we need to be prepared for questions.
That seems fair. I mean, that seems like a good plan.
But as a taxpayer, I'm being asked to vote to borrow 1.4 million.
Yes.
To build this facility,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Which it doesn't yet have a plan.
Well, there's a
Well, they
plan.
have a plan, but they don't have an approved, there are certain things that aren't approved yet.
So Dave, I'm gonna say the following, think of it as a commissioner, that's what I'm
Yes,
talking
yes.
about. You can all get up
Exactly.
individually
Yeah,
and
I
represent, so just.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
wanna get up, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah.
I'm trying to put my head in the position of a taxpayer gonna be asked to vote on this.
If for some reason they were denied everything, they wouldn't borrow the money, like.
And
They-
this is also a two-step approach, so they have to go through town meeting, I think there's a 2/3,
Yeah.
and then it has to get on the ballot.
Right,
Oh, it has to be-
because it's exempt
Oh, okay, gotcha.
from the
Yeah.
levy.
Wow,
So,
okay,
um,
oh, jeez.
again, I think we should be there to provide factual information,
Respond to questions.
respond to
Okay.
questions.
I won't be there. I'll be in Croatia, so I won't be there. You guys are on your own.
So we will figure that out, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, we will read the bridge before and
There we
then
go.
anticipate questions.
I think that's the right approach.
Okay, I highlight Article 25, only, this is the transfer of funds to maintain the Peabody School. And I just flagged that because the Peabody School, there were questions during the FinCom as far as why are we doing this? Now, understand the Peabody was under the responsibility of the school department for the new middle school. It's no longer necessary. It's now an asset to the town. So there's questions as far as what's gonna happen with it. We don't know yet, but I can tell you the Peabody School is part of a much bigger jigsaw puzzle of where does Public Works go? Could it be used as a staging area? I just flag it as it's a article of interest because Public Works needs a new home. And we don't know where that's gonna be, and I think just for the Public Works Commission to be aware in case anyone asks, we don't have our eyes, a design on the Peabody.
Yeah.
But, you know, you should be aware that that's, you know,
Yeah.
an important asset. Just, whether you wanted to have an official opinion on that or not, I just flag it more for awareness.
I would say
anyone asks.
no, unless there's been some discussion that we have, it seems to me we don't yet have
That's correct.
have a point of view.
No, but just be aware. The article,
Is that the right number?
no, it isn't. It must be 30. How did I get that? That's a typo. It's the.
Whatever
Whatever number it is, right?
Whatever.
It's the feasibility of acquiring 2229 Main Street. Again, for the same reason, Peabody's important. It's a piece of a much
The same
bigger
thing. Yeah.
puzzle.
Yeah.
A lot of acres, of potentially available space, but I will say my understanding is, it's probably 5 to probably 10 years out before there's anything that you really are gonna understand, but it's important. Again, another potential site for municipal operations. The 32 we just discussed, that was the betterment,
That's now,
commission,
Oh.
so that's gonna be
Yeah.
withdrawn. Article.
whatever,
Okay, something
MCI,
happened
Yeah,
here.
something happened with the number.
you will figure it out.
We know what you mean.
Yeah.
MCI Concord Planning.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can I just stop you? The feasibility on
2229, yeah.
Main Street. Do you have a position on that? I mean, I feel
No.
strongly one way or the other.
Not at this point.
Okay, because my concern is the lost knowledge guy. I worry a lot about the legacy of what's on that property.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah, there's always, we're concerned about that,
it's
yes,
not like taking over
Correct.
Peabody School. You know, that was a nuclear waste site,
correct,
right?
yes.
Okay,
That's important part of the discussion.
yeah.
And I'm gonna remind you that Sven has volunteered to participate in a municipal land use assessment study group.
Mhm.
So you've got a position at the table to,
It's gonna be out there with a Geiger counter.
Yeah, well. we might have you go out with the guy.
Okay, we have to,
Yep, the MCI Concord, it's interesting in that that's an article that is been presented to provide funds primarily for planning. The real challenge for the town is, we don't want to not have the resources available to understand what's in the best interest of the town long-term. At least a year of planning is gonna go into understanding, what that could be and how we could influence it. So it's not something that's driven by Public Works. Our focus is primarily on the wastewater side of it, but I will also say MCI is a potential site for future Public Works as well. So it's just on the radar.
I think,
And also the permit, right? So would.
And that's the wastewater. And
Yeah.
really, we're spending, and we have in our budget, in the sewer improvement fund, some money to spend towards assessing that facility.
Is this article in support of, is it gonna help us? Because it mentions the
It will not,
permit.
it shouldn't hinder us, and it
Okay.
may help us.
So wouldn't we support it? Or we not?
It's a good question.
I think the
Personally,
challenge,
that's
the challenge on this, if you listen to it, so, they put a lot of, wastewater there, but in the end, they want to use the money quite flexible and where it's
Oh.
needed. Yeah,
Oh, what they're asking for?
so,
Yeah.
I think
Okay,
is,
okay.
the only one we need to be prepared, this question is, why, if so much emphasis on wastewater, why is it not financed by the sewer improvement?
Right.
Fund,
Which we are funding for the facility.
Oh,
so,
so we could use that money.
Yeah, we will use that money, and we may or may not get money from this
Yeah.
particular
Oh, I see,
article.
I see. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
neutral.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Exactly.
I got it.
then Article 34, stormwater,
Yes,
Ours, right?
that is
ours.
We support that.
That will be second day at 6:45 PM. It's
What day?
scheduled,
When?
the second day at 6:45 PM.
Okay,
which is great.
It's scheduled.
And the presentation of that, there is an opportunity the moderators provided, given the importance of it, whether it was presented by staff or commissioner. And I've talked with Sven. I'm comfortable presenting. It's another 8 to 10 minute presentation. Sven would be comfortable presenting if that was, preferred. But the bottom line is, I think we have it covered and I'm open to, the commission's, sort of opinion. And yeah, so that's gonna be a formal presentation, but
And this is just to appropriate the million,
this is
right?
for the
That's
budget.
what it is for the budget, okay.
And to be very clear, not about rates. The
Yeah.
good news is rates have been settled.
Right.
The credit policy's been settled. The process has been there. This is literally to
Yeah.
get off stage and spend money.
The risk will be that that's not how it's interpreted at the
Yes,
meeting, right? So
exactly.
it'll turn into
It
something
will
else.
turn into
Yeah.
something else.
So who do you think? would-
So let's have Sven present and then Alan as technical backup. How about that? Is that
I
good?
don't know.
Cause
Whatever you're comfortable with. I'm easy either way.
I just keep pounding the fact of why this, the business implications, the tax implications for me as a taxpayer, why this is so important. And where
Yeah,
that.
that we're
money's
paying for
coming
it
from.
anyway.
Yeah.
You just
where-
don't
I
know
think
that
the
money-
presentation as such was say, significantly improved. And again, this morning Alan had a test run with the league and we could see it working out.
Yeah.
Right.
And how it runs. I think we got a little bit feedback for a few tweaks. But in the end, the question is,
I just want to make sure it stays focused on the actual.
Right.
No, it's a legitimate concern. No.
The audience will want to go to, why do we have this?
Yeah.
What are the fees?
Yes.
What if my pavers
Exactly.
are the pavers in my backyard pervious or impervious? Like, but we can't go there
Yeah.
because that's not what this is about.
Mm.
so in this, if I would do it, I would definitely have to rely on Alan a lot on technical questions that are coming up.
I think the
Yeah.
interest is not to go there.
Yeah. I will avoid it.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think
But
that's the
still,
purpose
people
of-
have the
Yeah.
freedom to.
Yeah, the risk is, and I understand it, if I'm there, they want to get technical. Yeah.
They can
and-
bring up
But what-
anything.
what-
Yeah,
what
they'll
am I
come up with all sorts of-
As a taxpayer.
I
And I'll
mean,
do
nothing
You're
to do with-
proving that we can use the money that is generated by the fees to spend
On
budget.
stormwater
on
The budget.
stormwater.
solutions.
It's only, we do it all the
You have
time
to,
with every enterprise
Yeah.
fund,
Yeah,
but it
it's
just
enterprise.
sits on the
Okay.
consent agenda. And I
Okay.
would bet in 2 years from now, this is also on the consent agenda.
Okay.
This is just
new.
because it's the first time
Okay,
and to understand the chicken and egg problem. That,
but even that I would make clear that this is like something that will become routine, but it has to be
Yeah.
approved. Cause otherwise
Your
I am
comfort
thinking,
level.
I
I'm-
am thinking, why am I asking? And I am gonna go to pay for this. Yeah.
okay,
Okay,
So-
thank you.
what's the, should I,
No, you just gotta do it, but it's.
Okay,
just
but
keep reminding. people why it's
you're
important.
damn close.
Oh,
to
yeah,
me.
yeah, we're right
Okay.
there, yeah.
You guys decide how you're
Okay.
gonna do it, whoever you
Yeah.
think is the best one.
Okay,
Right.
we'll talk.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, let's speed up a little bit.
Okay, then, just on the next two are, the citizen petition Protect Orchard House. We've had ongoing conversations. There seems to be sort of a misunderstanding as far as the purpose of town meeting and why this would be here. This is from, representative of the Orchard House.
Mhm.
Just like the discussion with the White Pond, there's gonna be an ongoing conversation. We know that. And I was just told as of yesterday that they are likely gonna withdraw this. So
It is our last meeting before it.
that's
And
right.
likely means there's also probability they're not
So we will
withdrawing.
have, maybe we'll work on a position that if need be, somehow it continues. I think there is a position where this is not precedent. We do not want this sort of, article where you have separate properties going to town meeting to make a case for investments for their benefit with
Mhm.
stormwater.
Yeah.
It's just, I think we would have to be prepared to,
So if it stayed, you would suggest no
that,
action?
no action.
So there are
Correct.
two ways.
Yeah.
Let me, one is no action. So it's off. The other way would be we are, we asked to commit the article to us. So there's a process to commit the article.
What is that?
You're sending it to a committee for evaluating, seeing what can be done with it, and then at the next town meeting, you report back what you think about that.
Hmm.
Motion to commit.
Oh, Oh, I've never heard of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Read a handbook. So there's a way. I'm either or, yeah, so, but I think we can make a recommendation to say, it's not a time, we just got a storm water budget. We set this up,
Yeah,
yeah, it comes on a long list, but town meeting should not override the priorities
yeah.
of public works. Or we say it in a different way, say, just send it back to us. Don't make a decision.
Well,
What do
if
you
they sent
think?
it back to us, we would just, what would we do?
You would
We'd say-
probably look at the where in the whatever
Yeah,
year
we're still,
program.
we agreed and we're already gonna be working with them. I think they understand the best opportunity is this commitment for town meeting, it's the wrong tool.
Yeah,
They really are probably looking for funds, which may be CPC funds, to
Yeah.
do something,
Yeah.
and that's the appropriate sort of action. This is a non-action.
So then there would be the recommendation for no action.
Mhm.
The storyline from my perspective would be this again, it says established this town meeting should not override things that are done on the operational side.
yeah.
And on my personal side, anyway, I think this town has too many exceptions and is overriding too many things and making just more work. So,
Can I make a motion that we vote no action on Article 35?
the motion is we recommend no action.
We recommend no action on Article 35.
Any second? Any discussion?
Do we have, so if we don't do anything, so I'm not used to this because FinCom, we have to take position on virtually everything. You get to choose whether you
That's right,
take an
yeah,
action
that's right,
on
yeah,
this or
exactly.
say something.
Yeah.
So if we choose to say no action, where does that go?
Well,
So
you
we-
can go to the podium and have a statement.
Okay, so
Yeah.
is that what we would do?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it would be
okay,
worthwhile,
okay.
yeah,
I see, okay.
for clarification, just so people understand.
Yes.
But it's
I
only
understand.
for the case they're not withdrawing.
That's
If they're
right.
not withdrawing.
That's right.
Okay, I got it, I agree,
Okay, all in favor?
I.
Aye. Okay.
And the rest of the routine articles we talked about.
Okay, so. Unfortunately, we just have 5 minutes left. We already elected the officers.
Yeah. We're gonna have.
You
a-
wanna kick the water down to the next time?
I
or-
do,
Yeah.
but I wanna do one introduction. Just,
Sorry.
It's all right. Darren,
Happy to talk to you in June or even September.
Darren LaFallen, is our new water sewer superintendent. He's been with us for just a couple weeks. We were able to get Darren, he worked over in Lincoln for several years, getting their house in order before we brought him on board. And before that, he was active in Worcester on other water treatment, processes. And Darren's very active in state associations, committees, kind of keeping an eye on the trends and actively involved. So Darren will be presenting, next meeting, a little bit more on the water sewer update.
Thank you, welcome.
It was fun to attend such a momentous meeting.
We are normally the sleepy committee. But
They don't normally have a full house here.
no, normally it's quite empty here.
I
Yeah,
look forward to getting to know all of you better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right, it is 6:28.
Anything else?
Do we hear a motion?
A motion to adjourn.
I
Adjourn.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Closed at
Well done.
6:28.